Welcome back to the Landlord Profitability Playbook series. I'm Chris McAllister with ROOST Real Estate Co, and today we're covering Profitability Play Number Five, Select Applicants Strategically. This might be the most critical play in your entire landlord toolkit. The tenant you choose today will determine your stress level, cash flow, and property condition for the next year or more. Get this wrong, and no amount of great marketing or systems will save you. Download the scorecard linked in the description below, and let's examine the 4 stages of tenant selection and see where your current approach stands. If you're in the reacting stage, any applicant that shows up with cash gets to move in. Your cash flow will not allow you to evict non-performing tenants. This is a desperate place to be, but many landlords find themselves here. You're so financially tight that you can't afford to be selective. When someone shows up with first month's rent and a deposit in cash, you hand over the keys without much screening. You tell yourself you'll be more careful next time, but when next time comes, you're in the same financial pressure cooker. You need that rent money to cover your mortgage, so you convince yourself that this applicant will be different. The problem is that when you can't afford to evict problem tenants, word gets around. You become known as the landlord who will accept anyone, and that attracts exactly the kind of tenants you don't want. You're stuck in a vicious cycle. You accept poor tenants because you need the money, but poor tenants cause problems that cost you money, which puts you back in the position of needing any tenant who shows up with cash. This reactive approach means you're not really running a business. You're just hoping things work out. You have no screening criteria, no standards, and no leverage to enforce lease terms because you can't afford to lose the rent. The stress of never knowing if your tenants will pay or what condition they'll leave your property in is overwhelming. In the surviving stage, your tenants never finish out their lease and never leave the property ready for the next tenant. This was supposed to be easier. You've probably improved your screening a bit from the reacting stage, but you're still not getting the results you hoped for. Your tenants seem fine when they move in, but they consistently cause problems down the road. Maybe they pay rent for the first few months, then start having emergencies that prevent timely payment. Or they move out in the middle of the night owing 2 months' rent and leaving the property damaged. You're constantly dealing with turnover, which means constant vacancy costs, cleaning costs, and repair costs. You thought once you got tenants in place, you'd have steady income, but instead you're dealing with chronic instability. Every time a tenant moves out, you're facing weeks of lost rent, plus hundreds or thousands of dollars in repairs and cleaning. The property is never ready for the next tenant without significant work and investment. You're starting to realize that your screening process isn't working, but you're not sure what you're doing wrong. You check credit and income, but somehow you keep ending up with tenants who don't work out. This was supposed to be easier than this. Real estate investing was supposed to provide passive income, but instead you're constantly dealing with tenant problems and turnovers. If you're in the muscling stage, your properties are vacant longer than you would like because you have learned the hard way that you have to wait as long as it takes for the right tenant. You've been burned enough times that you now understand the true cost of a bad tenant. You've learned that a month of vacancy is better than a year of problems, but it's still frustrating when your property sits empty. You've become much more selective in your screening process. You have standards now, minimum credit scores, income requirements, reference checks, and you stick to them even when it means turning away applicants. The challenge is that being selective means longer vacancy periods. While you're holding out for the right tenant, you're losing rental income every day. It can be tempting to compromise your standards when the bills are due. You're muscling through by being disciplined about your criteria, even when it costs you money in the short term. You know that the right tenant will pay rent on time, take care of your property, and stay for years. But finding that tenant takes patience. You've learned that rushing the selection process to fill a vacancy quickly almost always backfires. So now you wait, even though waiting is expensive and stressful. This approach works better than your previous methods, but it requires strong willpower and financial reserves to stick to your standards when vacancy periods stretch longer than expected. In the succeeding stage, you have systems in place to screen in applicants most likely to pay their rent on time without running afoul of fair housing laws. This is where you've moved beyond just screening out bad tenants to actively attracting and identifying great tenants. You understand that tenant selection is as much about marketing to the right people as it is about screening out the wrong people. Your application process is designed to appeal to responsible tenants while discouraging problem applicants. You might require online applications, employment verification, and landlord references, processes that serious tenants will complete, but problematic applicants will avoid. You know exactly what questions you can and cannot ask, what criteria you can and cannot use, and how to document your decisions to stay compliant with fair housing laws. You have consistent, objective standards that you apply equally to all applicants. Most importantly, you've learned to recognize the green flags, not just the red flags. You know what responsible tenants look like beyond just credit scores and income, things like how they communicate, how they treat your property during showings, and how they respond to your questions. Your screening process actually saves you time because it's systematic and efficient. You can quickly identify qualified candidates and make confident decisions without agonizing over every application. The result is tenants who stay longer, pay consistently, and treat your properties well, which maximizes your income while minimizing your stress and workload. So think about your last few tenants. How did you select them? How long did they stay? What condition did they leave your property in? Your tenant selection process is either your biggest asset or your biggest liability as a landlord. Getting this right can make real estate investing truly passive income. Next up is Profitability Play Number 6. Track your numbers. Keep scoring yourself honestly as we build your complete landlord profile. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.